Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
When I hear the word entrepreneur, this is literally the picture you would see in the dictionary. This is the true definition of what an entrepreneur is, especially in the music business. Matej Harangozo is with us, who is he created a couple really cool companies we're going to talk about. Open Source Entertainment, which is a record label and music business incubator, and a company called Digital Science Media, which when I went to their website and started looking at it, it's got a lot of great things to offer the independent artists. They're a digital marketing arm. Matej, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the welcome.
Looking at what you started with, I mean, you literally built a company from the ground up. I mean, from what I read, you started with really, I guess, 0% credit cards and got it into a 50-plus employee, $5 million a year in revenue company called greenNEWit. At the same time, you bought and scaled international franchise and employed another 35 people in the Baltimore area. I mean, you're definitely that serial entrepreneur, but reading your bio, you're also someone who loves music at heart, and that's really what's driven you to this direction.
That's correct.
Open Source Entertainment. How did that company come about, and what is it designed to do?
So during the greenNEWit days, which was definitely one of the biggest companies I had a pleasure to be a part of, when the money was good and, we didn't have to put in 16-hour days just into that company, I finally was able to get in the music industry. I always wanted to be in the music industry since ever I moved to U.S. as a little kid. And as you probably saw in my bio in high school, maybe I'm proud or not proud to say, but I bootleg CDs because that was a way to make a little bit of side cash, which I know the music industry hates that, but that's what got me so passionate about being in it. But anyway, so during the greenNEWit days when the money was good, I got into music production. I went to school for engineering, not audio engineering, but mechanical engineering, but the concepts of, compression, EQ, reverb, and all of that, I learned what that meant on the physical sense in physics. So it came very quick to me. So I very quickly became passionate about music production. And next thing you know, I'm like 30 grand into equipment. I got Pro Tools HD with, 32 analog channel summing. Like I built my own booth from scratch and all of this. So, I'm like dipping my toes in the music industry. I'm not fully in it. I got the studio in the basement. A lot of talented local engineers and artists are starting to come through, do sessions, hang out and all that. Right around 2014, I had another friend who was one of my first business partners in this, Dominic in Atlanta, that we sort of put, like 40 grand together for one of the artists that I had coming down to the studio that was very talented, Jon. He's still with me today. And we put some money behind him, and we wanted to brand him and market him to be, a superstar. Well, what I learned very quickly, since I was not able to, fully commit myself to the music industry, is that pretty much all that 40 grand in between equipment, website, and, showcases and marketing, things like that, was sort of spent on learning on what not to do. I didn't realize to what level of scams I was going to get into when hiring certain marketing agencies and PR companies in the music industry, to a point where they got us a lot of fluff, traffic, a lot of fake bots, and a lot of perception, what I call the perceptive way of marketing, which I'm not saying it doesn't have its, own place at a certain level of a artist brand, but it certainly doesn't have its place in the beginning of artist brand or any brand for that matter, right? I mean, if you're going to market your donut shop that you have in Manhattan or like a food truck to people in India, how do you expect to sell donuts in Manhattan? It's just not going to happen. So I created what I thought was going to be a future record label, Open Source Entertainment. And the reason I named it Open Source Entertainment is because I was a big fan of the software development term open source, how the developers and development communities would sort of take something like Microsoft Office and turn it into an open source platform, enabling any entrepreneur or any person that needed to use tools like Word, Excel, and all of that. And they put it on the marketplace, and it was very successful. So it was open source entertainment. That was the sort of the beginning of it, which is still not full-fledged artist incubator / label. That's really the aim of it. Once I raise enough money and I'm able to like get a foothold in either Atlanta, New York, or LA, one of the major music markets, there's going to be a full-blown artist incubator, just like any business incubator would be that focuses on a particular industry. But what happened out of that effort is I'm starting to market my artists and a few other producers and myself as a music industry professional. A lot of demand started coming down the pipeline just through my Instagram of saying, hey, we could use these services. We want you to market for us. We want you to do what you're doing because you're really having success and you guys are doing the real way, no smoke and mirrors. So Digital Science Media was born out of that, which is the digital marketing arm to open source entertainment, essentially, focusing specifically on the music industry.
With Digital Science Media, was this an entity you put together just based on your experiences and the mistakes that you went through and the things that you found that were missing? Or did you see some components that were already there and say, I can make this better, I can really build, I think, a better ship?
I think both. Certainly from the experience of getting burned in the music industry of hiring, bad marketing agencies and PR firms was a driving factor. But interestingly enough, that's not a problem that the music industry is facing alone. The other industries in greenNEWit, energy efficiency, I hired some bad actors in terms of companies that were claiming they would do SEO for us, do blogging for us, do this and that. They were just doing that half-assed, and I'm a software developer, told myself to develop websites. I'm like, I could do this better. So it was both. I thought I could do it way better. And another driving factor is the fact that, me being a foreign kid and coming here really with nothing and being able to, create some sort of success with a few of my ventures, I'm really passionate about education and helping the young entrepreneur doing it the right way, because it could be really daunting starting a business from many different aspects. So that's another thing that was a learning lesson. But lastly, I created it as a separate entity because I also learned that if you don't have a great team around you, you can't really build anything great. And I wanted to separate that entity because I wanted to get a business partner on board that was intelligent, smart, and driven, a young guy, my business partner, Tolu. And I gave him equity. I'm a fan of, if you're going to work for something very passionately, you better have some stake in it. You better own it. So that was sort of the technical administrative reason why we created another entity for Digital Science Media. And, here we are. He's definitely helped get the company off the ground. Now there's 6.5 of us full-time at that entity, and under a year for the digital marketing.
And you mentioned something about the education process, because everything that's changing in our industry, it's the music business is a living, breathing organism. And that's really, to me, it's no better way to describe it, because it's constantly evolving into something. Is this something that, as you get into that educational process, do you find yourself having to get a couple steps ahead of everything else as you develop this?
Absolutely. I mean, the digital marketing industry itself, it's something that I don't think could be taught in college, at least the traditional way, by trying to, print, you make some printed textbooks or even, PDFs, because by the time you develop a pretty solid learning manual, if you want to call it that, 6 months later, that thing can be 30% outdated, And I've struggled with hiring people that were, college graduates that say they had marketing as their major to really have the experience that I needed. It was mostly, people with marketing background, but they were super passionate about like the digital marketing aspects that were the people that I ended up hiring. It's definitely, a struggle from that aspect. You have to be ahead of it. If you're not embedded in that industry, or at least read blogs from industry professionals or from these tech companies to see where things are going, and not just that, even political, shifts. You see what's happening with TikTok. You see how much trouble Facebook got into by Congress because of, apparently the last elections. I mean, all of that has to be considered, and you have to kind of figure out if you understand where the industry is going to be going, how to navigate the waters, and to be an expert at it, you have to do things by the terms and conditions of these giants because we're playing at their mercy, and you have to kind of foresee a little bit of that, business kind of growth. Where are they going to be at? And most importantly, the consumer. What is the consumer doing on these platforms? So you have to be ahead of all that.
And the other thing, too, and of course you mentioned writing a physical manual, whether it's PDF or it's something digital online. It reminds me a lot of Pro Tools. I started on Pro Tools 7 and advanced all the way up to Pro Tools 9. I couldn't even tell you what iteration we're at now because after a while I just stopped. You keep buying the manuals and you're looking at the upgrades, and the technology is just passing you by so quickly that you're right. I agree with what you're saying. I don't think you can teach these things in college, and it really has to be hands-on experience. Also with what you said, because of the environment that's out there right now with Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and everything else that are these digital social engagement platforms, it's kind of like we had this conversation on another show. At one point in all of our lives, MySpace was the go-to. And then all of a sudden one day, MySpace just disappeared, and it's Facebook. And I'm sure at some point that's going to either evolve into something else or another social networking program entirely is going to come over and be the new face. As an independent artist, you need to not only be current with all of that, you also need to be better prepared to get ahead of it.
Absolutely. And I think you can't be married to one platform. I heard one of your latest podcasts, gentlemen, they focus on Spotify promotion. And I think that platform, it's like a gift and a curse. It's very difficult to, deal with third-party playlists. However, I think any business model that is married to that one platform, it's in a risky, predicament. Because what if Spotify completely changes their terms and conditions and takes away third-party playlists altogether? Then what? A ton of companies I know would just be out of business because that's the only thing they focus on, as opposed to focusing on Apple Music and Spotify and Tidal and, Amazon Music. Jeff Bezos is dumping billions into scaling Amazon Music, and, they're at the heels of Apple Music and Spotify. So if you're going to be in a business where you market artists into digital streaming platforms, try to diversify yourself and focus on multiples, not just one and only, because it could be devastating if a major change happens there, and then what? Can you adapt fast enough?
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Matej Harangozo, who is the founder, creator of Open Source Entertainment, is a record label and a music business incubator, and Digital Science Media, which we're going to get into a little more here.
Hej, det här är Oskar Höglund, vd och grundare på Epidemic Sound, och du lyssnar på The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena. And believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives. Whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Matej Harangozo. He's actually in Baltimore, Maryland. He is the creator of Open Source Entertainment, which is a record label and music business incubator, along with Digital Science Media. You mentioned something right before the break. I just received an email today from Amazon congratulating me on a purchase I just made, and because I had just made that purchase on Amazon Prime, I'm now an automatic subscriber to their music program for the next 90 days for free. That's really, when you think about it, you know, you now have, 600 million music titles available to me for 90 days at no cost, and that's another one of these fully evolving, breathing ecosystems of their own that we're all having to compete against now.
Absolutely. And, Amazon Music, think about Alexa. Think about all the voice devices that are out there. I think what's interesting to me about the Spotify business model, in relation to Amazon Music, is that both Amazon Music and Apple Music are sort of like a pet project of two major companies that are Apple and Amazon, right? Like, that's not their core business model. Apple's business model is iPads, iPhones, and computers, but Apple Music is a marketplace they created. And, Jeff Bezos, I think he's having fun with the entertainment side of what Amazon has to bring. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is that, Spotify as a whole, their entire model is just to provide entertainment. They don't develop technologies. Should they get into developing, phones or their own headphones, whatever, maybe so. We'll see where that goes. But it's interesting, what's happening, because when these streaming platforms got popular, Amazon, just within the last year, with the aggressive marketing that Amazon has done, they're about to be a third. If we say Spotify and Apple were the top two streaming platforms in America and U.S., Amazon is now becoming almost a third of that.
Do you think and I ask this question a lot, but I think it continues to be a relevant question. Do you think the independent artist can be a viable entity on things such as Spotify, as Amazon, as Apple? Is there room for the independent artist? And the reason I ask that is, maybe I should say it this way. Is there room for the artist on there to be successful? Now, the caveat there is, what do you define as success? If you're planning on wanting to be a multi-platinum artist, good luck. But can you be successful in your own right, whatever that level that you set it at?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know firsthand some of our clients that are just producers that cater to certain instrumentals make a great chunk, like $8,000 to $10,000 a month off of digital streaming. We have independent artist clients that are doing $1.5 million a year with maybe a $400,000 profit margin. That, I'm not saying all that's coming from digital streaming, but digital streaming is giving them a decent 20% chunk of that. It's something that independent artists are going to grow on, because it's, the word distribution back in the day, right? It meant that the record label had to have the relationships with the Best Buys, Walmart, Sam Goodies, and whatever to get the product in the physical stores. Now the digital platforms are your Sam Goodies and Walmarts. So great, now you got your CD in Walmart. But imagine that there's no foot traffic. You got to create that foot traffic. So if you're creative with marketing and can drive your fans and the traffic to these digital platforms, it's absolutely something that every digital artist has to be on. And they are taking more and more of the pie every single day. I think in 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if half of all the streaming revenue is given to straight up independent entities, for the most part, like isolated away or not being heavily supported by major labels.
Wow. That's a profound statement. And honestly, I'd love to see that happen, because the independent artist to me is really the future of this business. With that being said, what tools does that independent artist need? And is that where something like Digital Science Media comes into play?
Absolutely. So Digital Science Media is one of the tools, and we specifically focus on digital marketing techniques across all platforms. But not just that, I think that one neat thing about my company is that because of my passion behind, teaching the artists to do the right things and having the Artist Incubator be the parent company, is that we're also driving strategy with the client, where helping the artists and their small teams to think like a business person. You know, we're putting everything in Google Sheets. We're going over the numbers weekly, what that means, what type of decisions to make off of digital marketing data. I have this interesting video on my Instagram page where I describe the 3 pillars of music marketing, which in my eyes right now it's digital marketing, networking and PR, and then physical marketing like street teams, billboard, things on the ground. And depending on which location you're at, if you're in a major music market or in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, and depending on where your brand is at, you need to utilize these 3 different pillars at different ratios, right? So in the beginning of most artists' careers, I think digital marketing is the most important. And that's the tool that we provide because it's the cheapest way to market, period. Dollar for dollar, if you compare it to 99% of all the other marketing strategies you can think of, whether it's setting up billboards or walking around, passing around your CD or whatever, it's probably the cheapest way to get in front of more real human beings that are targeted in already being preconditioned to sort of like what you're giving them. And that's amazing. We didn't have that 20 years ago. That did not exist even in the major music, industry. They had their own ways of getting in front of the right people, but it's any artist, if they master it, they can do it. Or if they don't and they need extra resources, we are there sort of, we're a team of nerds and scientists. That's what we call digital science media, because we're, scientifically identifying the psychology of the consumer and understand how to get you the best price to get in front of that consumer as an artist.
Yeah, and I think that's something else, too, is those 3 pillars that you talk about, because what may work for one artist may not work for another, at least in a certain sequence. And we talk about that a lot. As when I was at one of the record labels, we would always say, it was a hat act. And as long as the artist fit the hat, we kept the artist. We never changed the hat. We would just change the artist. But it's different now. And the styles of music, the genres of music have grown, evolved, especially in the last 10 years or so. So it's creating whatever part of that 3-pillar process. Now, with regards to street teams, is this something that's physical, or is it something that's done online, or is it both?
So street teams are traditionally physical. A thing where we come in as a digital marketing partner is that we can help digitize the tracking of a street team performance. If you, for example, put QR codes or something scannable on each flyer or each download card, we can track the performance of it. So I've heard horror stories of, people in the industry, major execs, how they got started with managing people, and they used to hire street teams, and they would give like a stack of 100 flyers to some kid to go pass them around in like a particular parking lot, and they would just take half, toss it in the trash, and then pass out the half to be like, hey, I'm done, give me my $30, whatever you were going to pay me to do this. So I think, what we can help with is sort of bring that business process again in there with helping to, put that effort into a digital representation and see how you can, we try to force these artists and their teams to think like a businessman by analyzing data. And I don't want to make it too data driven because the whole, core concept of the music industry is that it's based off of art, which is very subjective, but I think you can infuse a lot of these, physical aspects. But, to give you a short answer, I would say, the street teams are like 80% physical, and then nowadays we can infuse 20% digital to make them more efficient and useful.
I know from my personal experience when I have used street teams on different projects, it is exactly that. You go out and see where they're supposed to be working or where allegedly they have worked, and you would at least expect to see some flyers on the ground or in a trash can or some evidence, and there's none. I mean, there's zero. And then you get the guy on the phone and you go, hey, I thought you papered this festival or this event. He goes, oh, yeah, I was there. It's tough. So does the artist need to get personally involved in that aspect? Do they need to oversee that more, or should they not worry about it and focus on other ends?
In my opinion, as a smart artist who wants to have a long career, you got to understand what's going on. You got to be involved to a certain level. But if you have let's say a small team where you at least have 3 resources, let's say you got a business partner, that could be your cousin, your mom, the classical momager, whatever. I think the artist should be involved in understanding where those things are being passed out, because maybe they can, help guide the street teams. It's like if you ask the artist, okay, artist, who is your super fan? Like if you had to identify your super fan, who are they? And where are they? Where do they hang out at? What type of food do they eat? What type of stores do they shop at? what other concerts of other artists would they go to? So I think the artists can, help with that aspect. And then whoever's in charge of the street teams should, worry about that. But I think, again, like you said, it depends on the situation. If you're an artist that does enjoy the business aspect, you're probably going to be involved, and you should be. And I think you can add a lot of value. If you're an artist that says, hey, man, pamper me, I'm the diva, just do whatever's got to be taken care of, I think it's up to the team and what they want to do. But, getting some input from the artist, I think is useful if they're part of what they're supposed to be owning at some point. I think that's where the music industry gets in trouble, where they isolate certain positions into these silos, when they say, no, artists, you just go in the booth and you worry about looking good and singing. That's where you hear these horror stories of artists, having depression and, committing suicide or getting the drug use or just being, scammed or taken advantage of for millions of dollars later on in their life. And I just don't think it's good for anybody involved in that situation. I think it could be a lot healthier.
Yeah, the artist has got to really take control of their career. We're going to take another break, get another word in for another one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to dig into digital science media with Matej Harangozo here out of Baltimore, Maryland, who is the creator of Open Source Entertainment, a record label, and music business incubator.
Hey, this is Oskar Höglund. I am the CEO and the co-founder of Epidemic Sound, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Are you curious about Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting process, or what it was like working with Prince in the 80s? Have you ever given any thought to what goes into a golf course design or writing a book? I'm Steve Waxman, the host of The Creationist, a podcast about people who create. Each episode features a different creator sharing stories that I hope will inspire your own creativity. The Creationist is available now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Matej Harangozo is on Skype with us today from Baltimore, Maryland. Let's talk about digital science media, because I go to your website and you have three basic, looks like programs or plans. You've got a standard digital marketing, and then you have an influencer marketing and digital contents, and then you have an entertainment brand marketing. So I come to you, I'm an independent artist or I'm an independent band. Does one of these work better than the other, or should I look at all of them, or where do I start?
I think if you're a band sort of starting out, I think the best way to go is with the basic digital marketing, because that's where we help you identify your targeted audience through some initial marketing. We'll help you identify your best piece of content, whether that's a song or that could be behind the scenes of something you've done or whatever. And once we know that, we can get you the right audience for less money, especially in the U.S. and Canada markets, which is very important. So I think that would be the best package. The latter one that doesn't have a price on it to say call us is more so for labels, because we do have clients that are small or medium-sized independent labels, and we sort of really have to understand what they're looking for so we can tailor a solution around it. But we have only certain core competencies that we focus on, which are digital marketing driven. So it's not like we're going to be offering them a lot more stuff that you can't really get out of the digital marketing package, the basic one, but it's going to be more hours spent with that client, and it's going to be more involved. We may have to sit there and kind of drive the strategy a little bit more with how to curate the content, what content to create in what order, how to manage it. And if you are coming to us with a $10,000 a month marketing budget, let's be wise with it. How do we target your super fan from multiple different angles, not just from one channel? So the basic is where it starts. I think that's good for any artist starting out. The latter one is from artists or small teams that are at different stages of their careers.
Does the artist, and you mentioned, you kind of get into that world of sometimes the diva, how much of this, let's say the standard digital marketing, how much of that involves your company versus the artist being involved? Is it a 50-50? Are you doing most of it, or are you guiding them? How does that break down?
So for now, and it may change later down the line, for now we expect that the artists and their team deliver all the content to us. we'll chop it up into like digestible snippets of content, and we may dress it up with like certain, calls to action, and just make sure if we're advertising on Instagram, it makes sense versus advertising it on YouTube, for example. So we'll do the formatting, but we can't help them with the strategy of what should you create. What have we seen in the industry with, now spending close to maybe $1 million in digital marketing between all of our clients? What has worked? What blueprint could you take on? So we tell them sort of what they can be creating once they join, but we expect that anybody joining with us as a team, they bring all the content. We do all the nerdy stuff. We set it up into these, complex campaign structures. We'll monitor the ad spend, the conversions rates, the click-through rates, all the data that unless you know business and psychology, you wouldn't understand, which we will end up teaching the team that we work with what all that means. But that's the role that we take on. We're sort of the high-level strategy. We expect the content to be delivered, and then we get our hands dirty with optimizing everything and making sure they're getting their, the best bang for their buck.
And that's something else I'm glad you mentioned. You, in the process of doing all this, you also educate them so they understand what all this, for lack of a better term, this coding is that, we're all out there saying, well, we can do these things, but what exactly does that mean? So you're giving them the education in the process that they can keep using this.
Exactly. And look, I don't mind if, and a lot of our clients do, like 4 months after being our client, they say, I think we would like to take this on our own for the next 2 months. But we've had cases where the artists became sort of successful by doing it on their own, and they got so busy where now they're doing more interviews. They're, out on the road a little bit more, not right now because of COVID, but, beforehand. And now they come back to us anyways because they knew we were competent. They knew we offered a lot of value. And, that's essentially what I want to build out, is that they come back to us because they know we could do a good job and we can sort of become their like digital marketing partner going forward down the line. And that's how a lot of our bigger clients see us, the labels that we work with, is that, they trust us in what we do, and hopefully we're in it for a long run. A lot of our clients, like the average stay is like 6 months to 9 months, even though we've been around only for sort of like 12 months as a firm entity in doing this. But I've been doing digital marketing for artists for the last 3 years or so by myself. But that's kind of the role we take on.
Do you see a new trend out there that maybe hasn't shown its head yet? And I don't know if that's a fair question or not, but do you see at least one trend in the industry that might rise above all the others, whether it's a platform or it's a new way to deliver music or showcase an artist, especially with what's going on now? Because we talked about this in a meeting yesterday. We're all so much in uncharted waters. We're all trying to figure out kind of what the next thing is. Do you kind of have an idea what that's going to be, or are you out there in the waters with the rest of us?
I have a few. I think, digital performances are going to get better and more quality to where one day you may be, instead of going to Dave Matthews concert directly, if you have like a 5.1 surround sound in your room and you have a certain setup, you will be damn near able to experience it as if you were like in the first couple of rows of a Dave Matthews concert. I don't know if you've ever been. I've been to a few. I love those type of performances. But I think that's one. And within the same sort of world, I think we have to watch out for holograms. We've already seen a few examples, and in my TED Talk, I did a TEDx talk in Florida in December, and I ended it with saying, in 20 years, imagine Jay-Z and Beyonce performing in 5 major global cities simultaneously. But the fans can't tell the difference until the performance is over. And in 4 cities, the hologram will just turn off. And in the 5th city, where they're in their real human form, they'll perform like the encore, like the extra 3 songs that nobody expected. And I think that's a reality we're heading towards. So imagine if a superstar can simultaneously fill out 5 stadium-size venues around the globe. I mean, that's going to change the game. And a lot of digital stuff. I mean, you see like Travis Scott did a video game. He did a concert within a video game franchise, right? I think we're heading there. Like imagine a Grand Theft Auto, the game where you like drive around and like kill people and steal people. Who knows? One day they may have an exclusive performance by DJ Khaled and like, another artist, and it's only exclusive to that game or something like that. And that's another revenue stream these artists are going to take advantage of. So there's definitely a lot of digital things I'm foreseeing. I'm hoping that we won't lose the human touch, and there's going to be a few things that I'm not really looking at right now that are going to be different that we never experienced on the physical side of things. But in the digital, I definitely see a few trends that I'm looking at and carefully monitoring.
Especially in the hologram world, if the technology can get there, I think maybe not this generation of us, but I think the next generation, that may become the norm for them.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram or YouTube. Those are probably my two main platforms at Matej_H_entrepreneur. I think if you type in Matej, M-A-T-E-J, it's important that the J is at the end, M-A-T-E-J, you should be able to find me on all platforms. And then you should see _H_entrepreneur. It's finally, my foreign name has become advantageous because all you have to do is type in my first name and done a good SEO, job in SEO. But that's where you can find me, or you can just go to digitalsciencemedia.com. It's probably simpler, digitalsciencemedia.com. And in there, you'll see a few of my, YouTube videos, my TEDx talk, and you can kind of find me on social media through that website as well.
Matej, thank you so much.
Bob, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
You're out. Finished. Expelled. I want you off this campus at 9 o'clock Monday morning.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.